Spookiest creature.
Hello, Liverpool aren't as good as they used to be, and they keep conceding the same sort of goals. Jurgen Klopp always plays a 4-3-3, but maybe he should think about changing it. And Mark Carey and I are going to figure out whether he should change to a 3-5-2. Mark, what is the problem?
Well, the problem is, as you said, Liverpool are conceding far too many occasions from a counter-attack. Not just conceding goals, but conceding plenty of opportunities. And we have this in the data here. So if we look down, we can see just how much Liverpool's direct attacks conceded have been creeping up season on season. Now, direct attacks here are sequences that start in the opposition's defensive half and end in a shot or a touch inside the box within 15 seconds. So it's a proxy for counter-attacking. And you can see quite clearly that there is a trend going up and up and up and up to being about an average of 3 conceded per game for Liverpool. That's the highest in the league, in the Premier League this season. So it shows just how much they are conceding counter-attacking shots compared to the rest of the league.
So there's a clear problem and they're conceding the same sort of goal over and over again.
Yeah, so we can look at that on the tactics board. So if Salah has the ball here and he loses it, let's say it gets intercepted by the central midfielder, for the opposition, the left wing is going to push on here. You can see quite clearly that there's a massive gap that's opened up. Alexander-Arnold will often be pushed up as the right back. So naturally, the centre back will come across, Robertson will come across as well. They'll be outnumbered. It'll either be through the wings or through central areas, but the gaps that are often between the centre backs and the full backs, or just between the centre backs, are far too wide, and Liverpool are giving up massive opportunities. Their XG per shot, so the average quality of a shot conceded, is also higher than anyone in the league. So they're giving lucrative chances to the opposition, and it's instances like this, which is why it's happening.
So what is the solution?
The solution, I think, myself, is a 3-5-2. So this, in my mind, is what a 3-5-2 would look like for Liverpool. And I know that this season already, there's been occasions where Alexander-Arnold has tucked in a bit of a 3-box-3, but in this instance, I'm going to sort of talk through why Alexander-Arnold should be a little bit more wide, or he can obviously tuck in a little bit, but in more advanced areas. And the first reason I think this could be useful is for the reason that we spoke about before, where if the opponent does get the ball, and then plays it into the wide areas which have been exposed by Alexander-Arnold being advanced, then you've instantly just got players who are already in position to shut it down. And then also you've got the ability for the 2 centre-backs to still tuck across. Now these gaps are going to be a lot smaller for the opponents to get into. So first and foremost, there's fewer opportunities to have highly lucrative chances to score. It's pretty integral.
So reason 1, defensive solidity at the back.
Defensive solidity at the back. The second, I think, is, I mentioned it before, to keep Alexander-Arnold in these positions, and we've also got some data to show that as well. So comparing his touches from this season compared to last season, you can see quite clearly that there's 10 more touches per 90 minutes in his own half, which is a problem, right? You want Alexander-Arnold to be in a position where we're maximising his strengths, not exposing his weaknesses, because it's been said quite fairly that his 1v1 defending isn't all that strong.
And this is linked as well to the problems they've been having. So to stop some of the problems they've having coming down that channel where he is, they've moved him deeper, so he's getting more of these touches. That's the data that proves it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's that in possession as well, but out of possession, you don't want him to be in those 1v1 situations quite as much. And we want him in these half spaces, and that's where he's going to do his most damage from an attacking perspective. And we've seen it in recent games this season where he's able to push on against Arsenal, against Leeds. He can create. He's got plenty of assists in him. Far fewer assists this season, but put him in the right positions and we know he'll create.
Okay, that's 2 reasons now. I wish to know what reason 3 is.
The third is that you can still have these sort of combinations. Often Liverpool are really good at having those right-sided triangles and still getting Salah into these sort of positions in the right half space. He is able to pull wide, but if you're to have him more in near the box, let's say, then he's more likely to score than necessarily collecting it here where he has done a little bit more recently.
Right.
The same is for Núñez on the far side. Núñez isn't the sort of player who's a winger in the style of a Luis Diaz who's going to maybe drop the shoulder and have really close control. He's far more kind of bulldozing, he's being sort of having those runs from out to in and using his pace, using his strength, using his height as well. His aerial ability is really strong. So if you can get Alexander-Arnold on the ball in this lucrative area, we've seen it a few times actually against Leeds, against Newcastle away, that ball to Núñez is often on. Núñez arrives in these lucrative areas rather than collecting the ball in far less lucrative areas to score. And then you can overload elsewhere as well. Gakpo could maybe be a bit of that similar false 9, but also support the midfield. Robertson could push on if there's sort of a second ball. Then you've still got that kind of front 5, but then you've got that protection of the 5 behind them as well, which is quite common for top teams to have 5 defending, 5 attacking. So you're overloading, or you're at least putting everyone in the position across each of the channels, and you've still got the protection in behind. More defensive solidity at the back, get Alexander-Arnold and Andrew Robertson in more lucrative areas to maximise their strengths, and get the forwards in more lucrative areas to receive the ball as well.
I like it. Now, I'm going to tell you why I think it maybe isn't the best option, just to go against all of this, even though this makes absolute sense. Klopp's teams need to be narrow because he wants to be able to win the ball back with counter-pressing to create chances. The very best team earlier in different versions of Liverpool, a lot of the chances came from these wide areas here, but they win the ball, and he's talked about how chance creation is better from a counter-press rather than anything else. Now, if you have this sort of shape here, when you want to press someone high up, so the goalkeeper's got the ball, and they're building from the back. Sure enough, you've got Nunez will be on here, Salah will be on here, Gakpo can block this pass into the 10, then you can push up on these guys here. But then you've got the wing backs who need to push up high and wide on these full backs, like this. Then these guys have to cover an awful lot of ground every single game, which is just not really sustainable if you're trying to press high like that. And then what would happen is that you've got a really easy outball from the goalie, because if Salah goes then to try and push this down here, he's going to leave that pass free for here so they can play out anyway. Also, if he goes and makes that press, the goalkeeper can just launch it to this guy and it's an easy take, and you've got the same problem. And if you have a 3 like this, if he comes across, and if he's then watching this guy over here, you've got the same problem with that spacing between. So what you could do instead of doing this like this is take Matip out, say, and put in an extra midfielder, so you've got some more attacking players. So then what you've got now is you play Fabinho to this sort of DM position, defensive midfield. Thiago goes up here, you're man for man now, but if you have a 3, but to solve the problem, isn't this the same thing they had anyway?
It kind of is. I mean, that's kind of the point that I was going to make, that if that system and that machine was functioning properly, then it would do, I think, what you're saying, which is Klopp's sort of normal way of playing. But it seems like they're just getting played through so easily. Everyone's just a little bit off the pace, that exposure in these sorts of central areas and these wide areas just seems to be too big. The gaps are too wide. So I'm just trying to think of a personnel change rather than a system change as a consequence, rather than trying to just force that same method.
Well, another thing I would say about that then is that the teams who tend to play 3-5-2 in the past that we've seen are normally weaker teams than their opponents. So like even when Julian Nagelsmann's used it, it's been for Hoffenheim. So they're not the stronger team, he'd use that. And so it makes you, because of the way you can't press the same, you drop ever deeper. So generally you're pushed back a little bit, and then a lot of your play is dependent on the wing back getting up and down, which you can stop, because we've seen that before with Liverpool. It's one of the problems and why they started moving Alexander-Arnold inside, moving Henderson out, or Salah outside, etc. The things we were talking about before. Now, if you do this and have it like a nice narrow 3 like this, if they lose the ball here, they're going to have more defensive solidity. But he wants to win it back higher up to prevent the teams being able to go at them like this. He wants to win the ball in these areas so that he can push players up, so he's got a higher line. If the ball's here, it's harder to score in this goal. But if they're closer to here, that's bad. My point is, in support of what you're saying, that even though I disagree with you fundamentally, Mark, and all that you stand for, if they are deeper, they are really good in transition, these Klopp teams. So if they're narrow and they're deep, you see, it's just how Scotland does it. If you can then play these like long passes that Van Dijk's got, or Konate can ping a ball out to someone like Robertson getting in behind, or Alexander pushing up, then you can play through transition like this. Because they're deeper, they are creating more space in behind to make this useful. But that is defensive, negative football rather than the proactive, heavy metal football that Klopp wants to. So I put it to you, Mark Carey. What should he do?
I do think that Klopp should persist with the typical system that he likes to, but I think this has its value in certain situations. I think one of them is against more of a counter-attacking team who's able to expose those wide areas.
So rather than risk with the counter-press system high up the pitch and then guarantee holes that they can go through, that's what's been happening. Just do the opposite.
Yeah, if you know you're gonna get picked off because Liverpool's press hasn't been strong recently, then at least try and change something there. I think the second one is to change it maybe sometimes within the game where Liverpool are winning by 1-2 goals, and then maximise what you said of kind of creating those spaces in these areas is by kind of having that counter-attacking play, by having 3 at the back, and then just knowing that the team has to come on to Liverpool, and then they're playing into Liverpool's hands to use one of their key strengths, which is counter-attacking.
So you're saying that this should be Jurgen Klopp's plan B?
Plan B, yeah, exactly.
Plan B. And the spookiest creature is skeleton.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.